Hey, Mama. Welcome back to the Mom Walk Collective podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Ari, and we are two moms just trying to navigate through motherhood. But today we are three. We have our amazing guest, Elizabeth Wellington, back with us. She is our Denver ambassador. She's a mom of one. She's married, and she's a licensed professional counselor in the state of Colorado. So today we're going to talk about working with anxious or scary thoughts. But Elizabeth, will you do an intro for everybody who didn't tune into the first episode?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth. I am the Denver ambassador of the Mom Walk, and so proud we were the first Mom Walk community in the state of Colorado. And as Ari mentioned, I have a son named Jack. He is going to be 2 in July, and he's just the cutest thing ever. I love him so much. And I'm a psychotherapist. I more recently became certified in perinatal mental health after undergoing my own sort of perinatal mental health journey. I've been a therapist for 10 years, but just have become so passionate about educating and inspiring new moms to take control of their mental health after navigating this very interesting time of life firsthand. So I'm so excited to talk about scary thoughts together today.
We are so excited. If you guys didn't listen to last week's episode or last episode, I don't know when we're rolling these out, but go back and listen to the first one. We talked about signs and symptoms, normalizing perinatal mood disorders, and really kind of teeing up going into these next few weeks. So the whole month of May, we are diving into mental health. We are bringing mental health awareness to this taboo topic that is just pretty much a mystery until you become a mother. Last episode, Elizabeth talked about how it starts from the point of conception all the way up to possibly 3 years after delivery. So we really recommend going back, listening to that. And then today, our new topic that we're diving a little bit deeper into is those anxious thoughts. So Elizabeth, if you can start in just even going into what are normal thoughts, what are anxious thoughts, what are all these things to kind of start to become aware that you may have a perinatal mood disorder, or maybe it hasn't even advanced to that much yet, but hey, these thoughts are a point of conversation. We encourage you to get out of your own head and into the conversation in the hands of someone that's safe for you.
Yes. Oh, it's such a good question. And this is such a wonderful topic. I'm glad we're spending an entire podcast dedicated to this, because this is one of the biggest taboos, the scary thoughts, the thoughts that we have in our heads, but we're like, I would never say that out loud, or I must be a crazy person to think these thoughts. So it's so wonderful we're talking about this and normalizing it. So I just want to define, like, what is a scary thought or an anxious thought? And you probably know, but to put some words to it, scary thoughts are those sort of negative, intrusive, repetitive, unwanted thoughts or images that can sort of like bombard you at any time. They can come in the form of like ideas, like what if I throw my baby down the stairs? Like a thought, like an idea, like what if I were to do this? Or it can come in the form of an image, like you could actually keep picturing the stroller going into a crosswalk and getting hit by a car. Like you could see it in your mind. And it can also be an impulse, like a feeling that's like, every time I walk down the stairs, I feel like I could like just throw the baby down the stairs. Like you feel like, oh my, like what if I could do that actually with my body? So those are all actually different forms of scary thoughts. So they could be either like passive, like all of a sudden they just like appear out of the blue, which is sort of like one of the disturbing variations. And they could go from like random and just, one-offs to like constant, repetitive, distressing, and causing like substantial interference in your life. And they may actually make you feel like you're going crazy, actually. Like you may be like, am I losing my mind here? So that's sort of how I want to define scary thoughts as we are having this conversation.
That's
I have a
good.
question just to kind of frame this as well. Like,
Hmm.
what is the feeling that you're having when you're having these thoughts? Are
Yeah.
you like, whoa, that's weird? Or is it
Yeah.
like what are those feelings? Because I remember having like these weird thoughts of like almost like protective mama coming out, like imagining what if that person was like hurting my child, or what if this person, and like do I need to like have like my guards up, um
Yes.
or yeah, like if I'm like holding my child, like what if they just fell? Like not that I was going to throw them, but it was like what if they
Right.
just fell? And I'm like, yeah, what are those feelings that you're having when you're having those thoughts?
Such a good question. And Ari, you're actually getting to the root of it all. Like your question is so good because the answer to it speaks to why scary thoughts happen. And they happen because we are anxious. That's why they are driven
Wow.
by anxiety. And so what a lot of moms get sort of stuck on is the content of the thoughts. Like that is such a messed up thought because sometimes they can be really messed up. I mean, a common one are actually sexual thoughts, like
Mhm.
feeling scared specifically of your child being touched sexually or something like that. And moms can get so upset and ashamed about the content.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and what I want to say to you all who are listening is that the content, as scary and like repulsive and disgusting and horrifying as it may be, the content is actually meaningless. It
Wow.
doesn't matter. It's random. It's like some random stuff that's coming from deep within your unconscious mind that's just coming up because you're experiencing anxiety. So the
Mm.
feeling you are having, whether you know it or not, whether you're able to identify it, is anxiety. These are anxiety driven thoughts, and the content is meaningless. It doesn't say anything about who you are as a mom. It doesn't say usually anything about the situation you're in at all. Like, so you can like actually discard the content and just use the thoughts as like a barometer for how much anxiety you're feeling. So if you're the mom and you're
Mm.
like, they're constant, they're relentless, I don't even want to be with my baby. Like I can't even, because
Mm.
that sometimes is an extreme case where you're like, you start avoiding your baby because when you're with your baby, the thoughts bombard you.
Mm.
That is a sign that you are experiencing like debilitating extreme anxiety. So that's the answer, Ari. It's purely anxiety driven.
I think that's like one of the most freeing things I think I've heard in a long time because I think
Mm,
hearing and thinking like I've had definitely crazy, like I struggled probably more with postpartum or perinatal anxiety more than depression. I think they go hand in hand, but the anxiety portion more. Um
mhm.
and it made me think, oh my gosh, do I need to do therapy on this? Like, did something happen to me as a kid that it's now being brought up? And now that I have a
Right,
kid, I'm subconsciously processing my own fears and all this type of stuff. Like it's made me
right.
then think even more, which probably adds to the cycle and like it builds on top of itself of like,
Totally.
wow, something must be wrong with me. I probably have this.
Oh,
Maybe it was so like traumatic when I was little that I trauma blacked out. I don't remember it. And now it's being brought up to the surface now that I have my own kid. And now I need to do all this therapy
yeah.
because I'm obviously thinking this. So you
Mhm.
saying that the context or content um, of the thoughts literally are just a flashing like red light saying, hey, you have anxiety, but it's not actually
Exactly.
saying like you have these deep rooted things that you need to now focus on and all that type
Right.
of stuff. I think just releases at least me as a mom of thinking, "Oh my gosh, I have so much wrong with me. Like I'm going to,
Mm.
taint my kids with like all of my
Mhm.
trauma." But really it's okay, there is something going on and there is something that I get to improve myself on, release the fear, release the burden, step into peace,
Yeah.
step into freedom. Um, but it's not actually the ridiculous things that I'm thinking. I don't know about you, Ari, but hearing that, did it release some freedom in you as well?
Yeah, I was almost thinking like, did I do this to myself? Like, was watching all the Law and Order SVU as like a young adult, as a, you know, like putting those
Totally.
thoughts in my head of just, I think as a mom, like that is one thing. I had a classmate that was kidnapped and sexually abused in third grade.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
to have that and then to have kids of your own, just having these thoughts of like, I
Mm.
don't want this to happen and who's close to my kids that these scenarios could happen. I think there's a sense of normalcy to that, but then it's almost like, and I'm not saying that those are like the thoughts that like run through my head all the time, but I'm more hyper aware of those ones
Yeah.
because of what I've personally gone through. So then to release that of like the random thoughts, I think is super helpful. I know we had a friend that also shared like she used to have thoughts of like putting the baby in the washer or the dryer,
Yeah.
and it's like that doesn't have to be tied back to your childhood. I think we are doing well as a society, I think, in the sense of realizing some of our personal things are coming from our past and our childhood, but being able to release these thoughts as a new mom, as like, this is not part of your childhood. These are just like Jamie said, like red alerts of like, hey, red flag, you're dealing with anxiety. You should probably go like process this, go start working on
Totally.
this. It's very freeing.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think the thing that happens is that we get so in our heads. I think you said that earlier, Jamie. Like we get really in our heads about our thoughts and feel very shamed of them and then would never speak them out loud. And then by doing that, we actually make them worse. Like they get more persistent because we're like, we feel messed up. So we don't say them out loud and then we kind of try to ignore them. Um, so yeah, the content of the thoughts doesn't matter at all. I'm giving you all permission to release any sort of worry that the content of your thoughts say something about you as a mom, because I promise you it doesn't. But what it does say is like how anxious you're feeling or not. And actually, there was a piece of research recently that said that nearly all of new postpartum moms and dads, like almost 100%, experience some kind of obsessive thought after birth. So it is
Wow.
universal. It's actually very universal. Um, and again, as we talked about in our last podcast, what makes it so uniquely difficult to tease out. Okay, if it's universal, at what point do I know if it's worthy of getting support for? Because it can also be a symptom of perinatal anxiety. So all that to say, like it's both universal and normal, but it's also a symptom of something more. So complicated and so complex. But as both of you shared, like you're not a bad mom for having these thoughts. It doesn't say something horrible about you and doesn't diagnose you as having childhood trauma necessarily. All of us just have our own different kinds of thoughts because of who we are and the stuff we're exposed to and the media we consume and what happened in third grade. Like, yeah, that's true, but you don't have to go into it. In fact, I actually recommend you don't.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I think coming out of this episode, people are going to be very interested in like, how do we manage it? So we will get to that part. But before we jump into that, um, as a new parent, there are also the thoughts of like, is my child okay? Are they
Yes.
developing okay? Are they, like the constant fear of like, when is it appropriate to take them to the hospital? Like, is this, or just the looming fear that something bad could happen, like to
Right.
their health or whatnot. And I think even having diagnoses prior or having a child born with disability can even like heighten those and make you more
Mm-hmm.
hyper aware. How then do you determine that, okay, these are normal thoughts because I am trying to take care of my child and I'm trying to be aware of their well-being,
Right.
um, versus no, this is actually like taking away from my life. Like this is actually diminishing the joy that I could be having with experiencing having a new child. or adding a child
That's a
to my
good
family?
question. It's such a good question. Well, okay, a couple of things. A million different things, actually. Because
I
you're
love
right.
this.
Being a new mom is just, there's a lot we have to think about. Like, is my kid breathing okay? He's been coughing. Like, is this a normal level of coughing or not? Like, that's what makes this time of life so uniquely hard, right? So there's a skill that I like to work with my clients. That's called check the facts. It comes from a form of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. And the skill check the facts can be really hard when we're experiencing an emotion and a thought that is overwhelming and we don't know what to do with it. And so by checking the facts, we literally talk through the data of what is happening. We'll check the facts. So the facts are that my child is coughing, he has a little fever, and I know that a classmate had croup last week. So the facts are, it's right to be anxious. Like the facts in the situation are, it is totally fitting the facts to be anxious. Now, is it helping you to function well if you're so overcome with anxiety that like you're distressed? No. So like, yes, your thoughts are fitting the facts, but maybe we do need to work on anxiety management. It's a completely different scenario where you're like, the facts, like there's no reason why I'm thinking about throwing my baby down the stairs. Like that doesn't make sense, actually. Like there's no reason. It doesn't fit the facts to be having a thought about, a constant obsessive thought about, is there something wrong with my baby when the pediatrician says it's fine? So I really like using this checking the facts skill as a way to assess, are these thoughts just anxiety driven purely and have no basis in reality, versus like, there's some sense here, there's some wisdom in my anxiety. The anxiety is actually causing me to take care of my child. But in either case, the anxiety needs to be taken care of. I don't know if that makes sense. The other thing really want moms to know is like, if you are distressed by your thoughts and if you recognize that they're bizarre. So if you're like, oh my God, these are bizarre thoughts, like I'm thinking about my kid getting, hit by a car, or, like if you're like, this is crazy and I feel like a crazy person, that means the very realization and awareness that the thoughts are like bizarre and abnormal means that you are okay, in the sense of you're not going crazy. Like you have enough awareness to know that the thoughts are bizarre. Does that make sense? So like, because some people are like, do I have psychosis? Am I like turning psychotic? Are my thoughts meaning I'm psychotic? If you know that they're bizarre, that means you're not psychotic. Because if you have psychosis, you don't know that they're bizarre. You think that they're real. Psychosis is like, my baby is a demon and I have to bury them in the backyard. I mean, this is really sad. Like I'm getting actually like stimulated saying this, but psychosis is like, I'm actually protecting my baby because they're a demon and I'm burying them in the backyard. And I believe it. And I believe it. That's psychosis. So if you're saying, I have this thought, but I know it's not right, you're not psychotic. You're experiencing anxiety.
I think
I just want to say that's very powerful, and I'm glad that you went there, because those are the things that just don't get talked about because it's too far for most society to accept. But I think having a mom be able to hear that, having a parent or a loved one around that mom being able to hear that as the distinctor, just that, I don't know if that's a word, but the distinction, it will be very empowering despite the scary thoughts that that mom might be having.
Yeah, and I think even too, being able, like, I think not stereotyping all anxiety is bad. I think there is, like you even saying, like, check the facts. Like, yeah, that is actually, that makes a lot of sense to have a natural worry and care and concern for the well-being of your child, that is normal. So having that feeling, urgency, desire to make sure they are okay is really healthy. It is
Yes.
when it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is when it becomes to where either you're in the point of distress, where it is
Hmm.
causing you to not be able to be in control of your current lifestyle, or it's to the point that it is so ridiculous that you're like, oh my gosh, I know that's super bizarre. I know that's whatever. And then you say even to psychosis is even a step further. And at that point, usually it's someone in your life that's actually probably going to intervene
That's
versus
right.
yourself.
That's right.
Um, but I think even being able to break down just like, hey, healthy worry is healthy. When it becomes unhealthy is when it is affecting your day-to-day lifestyle for you not to
Right.
show up to the best that you can. Um, so when it is at the point where you're not able to show up to the best that you can, um, I think like one of the things for me that I really had to work through is phantom cries. Every time I was away from my son,
Oh yeah.
I believed in the heart of hearts that he was crying. And it was that where it had crossed the line of like, oh, being concerned from a mother's ear of being able to know my son's cry
Right.
versus I can't actually function because that's all I'm thinking about and I can't be in the present moment to give my best self.
Right.
Um, to really then kind of what do you do from there? Can you talk a little bit about um, from little management tools to even the point of,
Yeah.
hey, I think you need to go talk to a doctor to, maybe getting on some medication.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those different aspects, please?
Absolutely. Yes. Oh my gosh, Jamie, thanks for sharing your experience. That sounds so hard. I'm so sorry you went through that. Yeah. So you're intimately aware of all this. So I think what we all know is that trying to ignore them or suppress them or avoid the thoughts doesn't work. But we try that, like, oh, we're just going to pretend, like, I'm just going to pretend this thought isn't here. Like, okay, I'm just going to go do this other thing and see if it goes away. That often makes them worse because they don't go away because the anxiety is still there. That doesn't do anything to acknowledge the anxiety that's driving them underneath. So there are a lot of really great things that you can do on your own to work on this. There is a really wonderful book. I'm staring at it right here. It's on my bookcase. It is called Dropping the Baby and Other Scary Thoughts by Karen Kleiman. Karen Kleiman, actually, the author of that, has a number of wonderful books. She's like the OG therapist who started working on postpartum depression in the 80s, like before anybody talked about this.
Wow.
So this book, Dropping the Baby and Other Scary Thoughts, it is so wonderful. It is a lot of information, but there's also like a workbook part of it where it literally takes you through writing down your scary thoughts, what to do, strategies, and how to work on them. So I really recommend buying that book. You can buy it on Amazon and put it into practice today. The other thing that you can try to work on is when you have the scary thought, this is really hard. You could, depending on where you are and what you're doing, if you're at home, you could go actually grab an ice cube. So have your scary thought. You're like, oh, there's that scary thought. Go to your kitchen, grab an ice cube, and just hold it. Just hold your ice cube. And instead of thinking about your scary thought, you hold your ice cube. And the ice cube, this is a really good way to regulate your nervous system. Cold water actually regulates the nervous system, or just cold temperatures. So you can hold your ice cube and you could do this while holding a baby. You could do this while doing the laundry. You just hold your ice cube and put all of your attention into your ice cube and feel the feeling, the sensations in your palm. Just you can tell yourself, like, this thought is meaningless. Feel the ice cube. This thought is meaningless. Feel your ice cube. This thought is meaningless. And just try to let it go while you regulate yourself as much as you can. So, and I like that because it's acknowledging the thought, doing something to distract yourself a little bit and to regulate your nervous system, And then just like training your nervous system to let the thought go over and over and over again. I mean, if you have to do that 100 times a day, I have clients who like bring bottles of ice like with them to do this skill. I'm not joking. Like so that when they're feeling anxious, they take out their ice cube, they hold it, and they just breathe, and they say, okay, that was a weird thought. Holding my ice cube, breathing, letting it go. And you just do that a million times over and over. And it's just training to acknowledge the thought, to let it go, to balance your nervous system. And like over time, you're sort of just rewiring your brain to not get caught up in the thought, just to let it go. But a therapist, it would be trained, a therapist who's specifically certified in perinatal mental health will know. If you want more like tailored support, we'll come up with a plan for you to work on the thoughts. But those are just some ideas.
I mean,
really
that's
good.
great. I think that's accessible to so many. I won't say all because, there's unique scenarios, but
Yes. Yes.
I think that that is accessible to so many of just grabbing the ice cube. It made me think like, another reason why a cold plunge might be handy in this household. My husband and I have been throwing
Yes.
around the idea of getting it, but it's
Yeah.
just, I think cold therapy brings you to the present moment, right? Like it just you can't
Right.
really think about anything else when you're
That's right.
submerged. So that, I love that.
It's so good.
Right.
What are, to kind of end the episode, what are some maybe like 3 thoughts that you could give a mom to empower her as like positive thoughts to go through her
Ooh,
mind?
love that.
That, like, hey, this intrusive thought came, I'm actually this. Um, whether it's like,
Love
I
that.
am a strong and powerful woman, I can do this. What would be 3 things that you can encourage a mom to say once the intrusive thoughts leave and she can really re-empower and strengthen herself back in the moment?
So one that I really like is there's reminding yourself that there's wisdom in everything you're experiencing. Even the distressing stuff, there's wisdom. Everything we experience, even the messed up stuff, there's wisdom in it, right? Because it's like what we just talked about earlier. Even the anxiety sometimes is anxiety is stimulating us to be amazing moms. Like anxiety is driving us to respond to the baby's cries in the middle of the night. So even though like you're suffering, which is like the maladaptive side of the coin, the other side of the coin is wisdom. So how about I'm struggling and there's wisdom in all of this. Like
So
I
good.
am perfectly wise. I'm perfectly
Mm.
wise. I always like balancing a negative thing with a true thing, not necessarily positive. So I'm struggling and I'm wise, or I'm feeling like a bad mom right now and my body is perfectly equipped to do this job. Or like I'm having a really scary thought and I have all the tools and resources to handle this. So like I like balancing, they're called dialectical statements like that.
Oh,
Mm.
so good. Well, we are really excited to continue in the upcoming episodes to go more into specific things. We don't want to go too deep because, again, we want you to be able to have these small indicators to either start conversations with those who are safe around you, or for this to be an indicator to go talk to a specialist like Elizabeth. She had mentioned a licensed therapist is going to be able to actually cater a care system for you. I just want to remind you, they are trained professionals who have gone to years and years of schooling to be able to do this for you. So you don't have to feel like, oh, I just have to
Yeah.
find the solution myself.
No.
So we hope that this episode really encouraged you to maybe turn on a light bulb of, wow, I'm not crazy. This is normal. And I am at the point where I would like to go get catered help, or I just want to start opening up to someone else about this. Ari, do you have any thoughts, and would you want to close us out?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for diving into this taboo topic. We are going to be diving more into breastfeeding and mental health, that journey. If you choose to breastfeed, the pressures that come with society to breastfeed, and just really embrace the mental health journey that comes along with. We're going to dive into finding emotional wellness as a new mom. So that episode's going to be more tactical with self-care planning. Then we're going to wrap this up with a bow to help you find resources for mental and emotional health, what to look for when you're shopping for a therapist and or a psychiatrist, and then how to search and select one. So we're not just going to leave you hanging dry. We're
Yep.
going to equip you. Elizabeth is going to equip you with how to then, if you recognize anything within these episodes, how to seek help. At the Mom Walk Collective, we host walks 2 times a month for moms to get together. There is nothing to it. It's just you get to just show up as your authentic self. You get to show up and connect with moms that may have not been in your personal circle, but are going through the same things that you're going through now and can just leave room for connection. That's what we really want. We want you to be able to create your village so that you can raise the next generation with these moms around you. So if you are attending a walk with us, amazing. If you just got sent this episode and you're like, hey, what are these walks? Where are they? Go to the momwalkcollective.com, find a walk near you. We have a walk finder where you can enter in your zip code and it'll show you where a walk is. If there's one not near you and you're like, we need this in our community, we have a sign up page to become an ambassador, and you can apply and we'll get back to you on the first of every month. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. We're excited to dive
Thank
deeper
you.
into these topics. Jamie, if you want to close us out with the cringe, and then
Yes.
we will close out.
We just are trying to reach as many people as possible. So please like, share, subscribe, comment, the whole shebang. Our heart is for as many mothers to just feel empowered, simplify motherhood, resource you in motherhood. And that is why we're so excited with all these conversations with Elizabeth. So you can find us on all streaming platforms. We also put the video version on YouTube. We have our socials accounts. It's the Mom Walk Co. And again, Ari said, if you go to our website, themomwalkcollective.com, you can find all of our other resources as well. Other than that, we love you, Mama, and thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you, Mama.